I'm also married to the beautiful and wonderful Isabel Chapel for 2 years back in May. So she's the best part of me. But what y'all need to know is, one, that I love her the most, but I also love two other things very much. The first is going to Colorado, and the second is related to it. I love to go to Colorado, and I love to hike. And I believe we have a picture of one of my favorite peaks to hike that we're going to put up on this screen real quick, because I'm going to walk you through how to hike up Byers Peak, which is what this is. This is Byers Peak. It is about a 10-mile round hike. It's 12,000 feet, 12,888 feet, so it's just a little below 13,000 feet, okay? And I have been up it. You see this very vaguely, the little snow up there at the top. You see it? Yes? No? Yes? I touched that snow. My handprints are on it. I didn't do a snow angel because I didn't want to fall off and, die. But the first time I went up it was with a couple of buddies named Mike and Jimmy Griffin, and the trail, it kind of winds through here, and it's not too bad, but then you pop out for timberline right around there. And when you get up there, there's this little wooden sign, and it says 1.1 miles to the peak. And this sign, it doesn't lie, but it's a little misleading, as we found out. Because most mountains the size of Byers, they do what's called cutbacks. And to get to the top, they take this nice winding thing to the top, but not this trail. That 1.1 miles goes, ooh, look, a peak. And you take maybe one turn to get to the top. It is murderously steep. And it is the longest mile of your life. To couple with that, there's a thing called a false summit. If you ever go hiking timberline, you will become familiar with these, because it looks like this. It looks like at the top. It looks like you're going to get there. And you struggle, and you get up there, and it's not the top. Byers doesn't have one false summit. It doesn't have two. It has 3 false summits. And so me and my buddies, we saw 1.1 miles. We were like, hey, we just walked like 3 times that to get here. We're almost there, and we just gunned it. We gave it all we got to get to the top. And only to have our souls crushed every time it comes up and go, we're still not there yet. It never ends. About the 3rd false summit, my buddy Mike looks at me and goes, guys, I'm not saying we're turning around, but I need y'all to know I'm seeing spots. I was like, this is not good, but we made it to the top anyways. So, fast forward another year, and I decide I want to go do Byers again. I have another buddy that goes with me. He's a little younger than the 3 of us that were there that time. And so he's, we get it up there, and he's all antsy and ready to get to the top. And he asked me, how far are you going to go before we take a break? And I looked up, and I said, you see that? It's about 50 feet up, and there's a little patch of grass in the trail with a little flower out there like that. And I said, you see that little flower doing that? And he goes, yeah. I said, that's where I'm going to stop. And he looked at me very unimpressed. And he goes, well, I'm going to go ahead and push on. And I said, by all means, you do what you need to do. And so he takes off, and he gets a good, 10 feet, 20 feet ahead of me, because I'm struggling going up this hill. And the strangest thing happens. He gets to my little flower, and he stops. And he waits for me to catch up. Because he figured out real quick the lesson that we learned the hard way the previous year, that pace is not the same coming up the side of this hill. It's not the same thing in timberline where you can't breathe. You have to go at a slower pace if you're going to make it up this hill in a decent amount of time. Pace of life. It's not something we think about. Actually, and I have a little exercise I want everybody to do with me here real quick. I need everybody that is not Papa B and Walker, because he's destroyed his knee and the last time that I've seen him. On your feet, stand up real quick, okay? We're going to run through a few things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list off something, okay? And if you do it, you have to sit down, but then you have to stand right back up because I'm moving on to the next topic. Does that make sense? Everybody got that? That wasn't confidence building. Everybody got that? Okay. All right. So if you spend at least 3 hours a day on social media, sit down real quick and then stand back up. Okay? Okay? Back up, back up, back up, back up. Okay? What else do I have here? Okay, if you're going to go to more camps or practices than you have vacations this summer, sit down and then stand right back up. Okay? All right. This one, everybody's going to, well, most everybody. If you have to go to school coming around in the fall, sit down and then stand back up, okay? Everybody, yeah, okay, everybody's on this. Okay, if you are competing in an athletic event, if you're on an athletics team, sit down, stand back up, okay? If you're doing band, sit down, stand back up. Theater, sit down, stand back up. Okay? Any other extracurricular that I haven't been able to think of, chess club, anything, piano lessons, dance classes, anything, sit down, stand back up. Okay? If you have church services, if you're going to go to church or if you serve at church once a week, stand down, stand back up. Oh, that's a lot of you. That's impressive. Okay? If you have a job, sit down, stand back up. If you're going to be doing any three of that combination at any given point, sit down, stand back up. If you've had to do this 6 times, sit down, stand back up. If you've had to do it 7 times, sit down, stand back up. Who's tired of having to sit down and stand back up? There's a few of you? Good. Sit down real quick. You can all sit down safely. Can you see how this pace thing can get away from you? None of the things I listed off were bad, okay? None of them were bad. They're all good things to do. But it's real easy to let them take over. And we get run into the ground. And we get tired. And we get burnt out. Okay? That's the importance of pacing. The wrong pace comes at a price. Okay, you can do everything, but it's going to cost you something. The spiritual discipline of pace is called Sabbath. Now, Sabbath is one of those weird Christianese words like tithing. It's one of those Old Testament things that we don't always talk about in church. As a matter of fact, I'm fairly sure, having grown up in church, we talk more about tithe than we do about Sabbath, which is weird because tithing doesn't make it into the 10 Commandments, and Sabbath is number 3. It goes, don't make idols and don't worship other gods, don't use his name in vain, observe the Sabbath, and then it goes, don't kill people or steal or cheat or lie or covet, okay? It's kind of important. But what is Sabbath? Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11 says, this is the commandment itself. It says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But on the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or your daughter, nor your male or your female servants, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So we read that and we go, what's the big deal? It's a day off. But that's not really what the Sabbath is about. You see, the Sabbath is about freedom from slavery. Because the people that God's giving these commandments to were the Israelites. And before they're here, anybody know what they were for around roughly 400 years? They're slaves. How many days off does a slave get? He had no days off. God is commanding them. He is gifting them this day off. It's not about just the day off. It's about identity. He's trying to teach them how to not be slaves, how not to think like slaves anymore. They don't have to do anything. Now, I know what you're thinking as well. JC, this is America. Everybody's free here now. We're not slaves. We handled that back in the Civil War. We're working on some other parts of it. But we got rid of the institution of slavery a long time ago. There are no slaves. I'm free. I do what I want. This is America, right? America. Let me add a machete to your intellectual thicket here real quick. That's a big phrase. If you only ever do what you want, because you're free to do whatever you want, but you only ever do what you want, are you free? I can physically see smoke coming up from some people's heads. The answer to that is no. Because if you only ever do what you want, then you are a slave to what you want. You are not free until you can say no. American freedom may be to do whatever you want, freedom to. But biblical freedom is freedom from. That is what the Sabbath is. Sabbath is meant to be freedom from the hurry. It's freedom from the busyness. It's freedom from distraction. That is its purpose, is to create space in our lives. Now, some of you who have done your church reading plan, you've gone into the New Testament and you find out that, there's a lot of arguing between the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and Jesus about the Sabbath, okay? And there's some history behind that real quick, okay? You see, before Israel ends up in captivity and all this sort of stuff, they didn't observe the Sabbath. They kept on acting as slaves. They would ignore a Sabbath day. And then they got amongst the number of other things they were not doing that God had asked. They end up in captivity and they end up as slaves again. But then they get freed again, and they go the polar opposite way. They take this Sabbath thing, and they go crazy about it. They get super legalistic about it. There was a limit to how many steps you could take on the Sabbath before it was considered work. So that's a little cray-cray. We overcorrected, okay? And so they're arguing with Jesus about this all the time because he'd break all their little tiny rules that were not in the scriptures. And Jesus finally confronted them one day and said that Sabbath was made for man, not the other way around. Sabbath is meant to be a gift, not an obligation. So what do I mean by this? Okay. Today is June 21st, right? 6 months and 4 days from now, what is the day? No, 6 months and 4 days. It's Christmas. Does everyone love Christmas? Yes? What if I was to tell you that God wanted you, his gift/commandment thing that we're talking about. What if I were to tell you he wanted you to have Christmas once a week? That's what Sabbath is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a celebration. It's supposed to be a holiday. It's supposed to be Christmas once a week. So what does this mean? Okay? It means that you do on Sabbath what you would do on Christmas, or you don't do on Sabbath what you would not do on Christmas. What you don't do is you don't do anything that you consider work, okay? And that is subjective. I know of one person that's big on practicing their Sabbath. They love to go out and garden, okay? And for them, that's not work. They enjoy that. Now, they're also in California where the weather's not trying to kill you on an average basis. So I consider having to work out in the yard work. I had to race the storm to mow the yard today, okay? But on the flip side of it, I like to cook. That I enjoy getting to cook. That's not work for me on that day. Sabbath is meant to be a day of rest. You do no work. Whatever you consider work, whatever you consider a normal work day, you don't do that. It's also meant to be a freedom from these distractions. All of that social media, all of the video games. It's supposed to be a break from this as well. It's a moment to disconnect. My phone is turned off to where I cannot play video games, or I don't really get on social media. I'm boring that way. But it's set up to where I can't do that on whichever day that I've decided to be my Sabbath. My lovely bride, she even does something that's very strange in this day and age. She turns off her phone for the day. If we go out, I have the phone in case we need to make a call, but she does not have her phone on her. We disconnect because that's work for her. Does it make sense? It's this idea of being able to set down the burden. We don't carry things that weigh us down on Sabbath. Just like we wouldn't on Christmas. No one wants to do homework on Christmas. We actively work building up and protect Christmas from the dreaded homework, right? It's supposed to be a holiday. The second thing about observing Sabbath is we do things that we consider recreational. We do things that are life-giving, that are fun to us, okay? Maybe it's sitting down and playing a board game with family. Maybe it is getting together with a group to play something or to watch a movie. Or it's things that are more restful. Again, like me and my bride, well, the thing that I love to go do is go on walks or go sit on a swing somewhere and just get away from everything. I also like to go get my bow and I'll go set up some targets and I'll go shoot for an hour. These are things that give me life. They help me to disconnect from everything around me and reconnect with Jesus for that 24-hour period or so. And the last thing that it comes with is it's a time to worship. Sabbath is the whole point of creating this space is to create a moment to be present with Jesus. Now, for some of you, Sabbath day may be coming in here on Sunday, and your worship is all up here with the music, with the lights, with the sermon, and that's good. But it doesn't have to be that. Right now, typically I Sabbath on a Saturday. I take that day off. I don't set an alarm. I wake up whenever I want to wake up, okay? But somewhere in there, I usually will take a walk, and I'll go and pray. Or I sit down and I do my Bible reading when I wake up. Because I've made this time to do that. I might wake up and my beautiful bride, who's been my instructor so much in this topic, she will wake up earlier than me because I sleep late on Sabbath because I can. And it's very freeing. But she'll wake up a little bit early and I'll wake up and she's sitting in there with her journal and some worship music, and that's what she's doing. This is our moment to connect and to be intentional with that. And the point of this is to refresh ourselves. It's that goal of being able to celebrate with people, to celebrate having time with Jesus. Because when we create that space, when we open up room is when we have time, when we shut all this noise out is when we're able to do all that. Now, we do have to be mindful again of this legalistic thing that can get in there, okay? I try and Sabbath for a full day, but some of you, you're going to be like, that's not possible because I don't get to set my own hours. We have these things called parents, and we have these activities and all of this sort of stuff. Sabbath is about practice, not perfection. We're working on this, okay? What I've described as a basic deal for our Sabbath, I'm still adding things to it. I recently added the archery thing to it. We were talking today about it, and we talked about maybe going out and getting tea, because I am all things British, and I love to go out and go have tea, okay? But this is something that we're practicing at. We don't have to do it right every time, okay? There's permission to grow in all of this. And it's not fixed. It doesn't have, if it helps you to have it on a particular day, then have it on a particular day. If your schedule's crazy and you have to decide every week, just here's where I can block out this time, block out the time. But again, block out the time. Because if you prepare for Christmas, then you can prepare for a Sabbath, okay? That may mean that you have to get your homework done a little bit early or sometime afterwards to do it. I have to do that because I'm having to do homework again, which is for the birds, okay? But I block it out. Saturday doesn't exist for anybody other than for me and for Jesus and for Isabel, okay? I love the rest of you, but if you call me, I'm probably not going to answer, okay? Guard it. once you created it. But again, there's this flexibility with what you're doing in it. It's supposed to be an exploration, okay? It's finding out what Jesus has for your heart on that day, okay? So, we're going to take a second here and go into a moment of response. So if I can have everybody bow their head and close their eyes. Nobody looking around for just a second here, okay? And so there's two groups of people I want to talk to you tonight real quick. The first group is anyone that is feeling like they've just realized that they're tired. It is literally midsummer. And you've realized that you're tired, you feel weighed down, you feel this burden. And if that's you, I want you to just raise your hand real quick for me, okay? I see those hands. All right? And here's the thing that I want you to know is that Jesus said that his burden is easy and his yoke is light. That he's come to give you rest and restoration. So let me pray over you guys real quick. Lord, I just thank you for, we thank you for who you are. And I just pray over each one of these young men and women that are feeling heavily burdened, that are feeling overwhelmed, that are feeling tired and worn out, God. And I just lift them up to you, God, that that you would show them how to slow down, that you would help them to make room in their lives for the gift that is the Sabbath that you've given them, God. They would have this moment to encounter you, to be refilled and refreshed with you, Lord. And that you would guard their hearts against any distractions, against all the busyness and the hurry that tries to build up in their lives, God. Amen. The second group that I want to talk about, maybe you've had a bigger revelation here that you found out tonight that, I thought I was free, but I might actually be a slave to whatever I want. And if that's you and you've never welcomed Jesus into your life, to find that freedom in him, here's what I want you to do is I want you to raise your hand for me real quick. I see that hand. I see those hands. If that's you, and the first thing I want you to know is this, is that same thing. Jesus said that my burden is easy, my yoke is light. Part of his purpose was to come to set us free from the slavery of this world and the pace that it puts on us. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to pray together over that, and then after we do that, there's the next step, which what that'll be is if you have not been baptized, there's going to be back at the back of the room, there's a big sign that says the next step. And so after we pray, and if that's you, I want you to go back there and talk to Savannah about baptism, because that's where we go from here. Okay, if we're talking about mountains, that is the beginning of the climb, not the end of it. Okay, so let me pray. Lord, I just pray over everyone that has raised their hand, God. And I pray for their freedom, that they might feel that and encounter it, God. That your death, your sacrifice, that your resurrection has set them free. That has set them free from what's been holding them back. It set them free from being a slave to what they want, God. And we just welcome you, God, into their lives and and welcome them into your presence. In your son's name I pray. Amen.